very, very soon. On that note, I'd like to introduce you to Deborah Garlick. Deborah is from Henpicked, and I am confident that Deborah will talk to us more about everything to do with the menopause, and I shall manage the chat box, but of course I think you've got a colleague also in the chat box, and we will pose those questions towards the end. So thanks ever so much for your time, Deborah, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Carla, and to everybody on this call, congratulations on all you've done. I have to say I was sitting here feeling so excited that there was so much conversation going on around menopause, and it's billed as the finale. I'm sure we're going to keep those conversations going and flowing for much longer. It really does make such a massive difference. And I did think, what would be the most motivational thing to draw your fabulous events to a close? And for me, that was making sure that if there was any questions in your mind, anything that you come out of a session or you've been thinking about, that we answer those questions for you today. So I'm delighted to introduce a panel of experts from all areas, and we have with us Dr. Shazadi Harper from the Harper Clinic. You may know her as the menopause doctor. Please do follow her on Instagram. She's absolutely fabulous. And Dr. Shazadi Harper is going to cover off some of those HRT questions, along with other more holistic, because she's very passionate about the whole journey and all aspects of support. And we have Jackie Lynch with us, who's a registered nutritionalist and the author of the book The Happy Menopause, which came out last week. And what I love about Jackie, in today's busy world, Jackie's hints, tips, advice is always incredibly practical, and everybody can do it. So so welcome, Jackie. And of course, you don't really need a lot of introduction to Julie Robinson of Meno Health. I hope you've been tuning in and following the Meno Health classes. And my colleague Michelle is behind the scenes. So whilst we won't be able to give individual advice, what we're going to be looking for.
Sorry, Deborah, you've just muted. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Back
okay.
on. I'm a menopausal woman. I have my questions prepared. Lovely to see you all again, team. And of course, I've been looking through the chat to see what the questions are, and starting as if nobody had been to any of the sessions. I think it's worthwhile as covering off a couple of those bases around what menopause is, its stages. And first of all, if I may turn to Dr. Shazadi Harper and tell us, what is the definition of menopause?
So hello everyone, thank you for inviting me. I'm Dr. Shazadi Harper, and we're going to do a sort of a whirlwind through the menopause. So the menopause is actually, the time of life when your periods end, and it's what we call a retrospective diagnosis, which you make 12 months after having no period. So you look back and you think, I've not had a period for 12 months, and that was when your menopause was. But we often use it as an umbrella term to encompass all of those symptoms leading up to it and after it, with regards to the perimenopause. And I think it's really important to understand that the menopause is not just a one-off event, it's a journey, it's a stage, it's a transitional time.
Thank you very much. And actually the perimenopause is probably the time that most people don't realise is there, isn't it? That's when the body starts to change and hormones can start to fluctuate. But a lot of people don't realise, you don't get notification you are now in perimenopause.
No, so perimenopause can sometimes, for a lot of women, it starts off, with a slightly shortened cycle. So your 30-day cycle becomes about 28 days, 26 days. You feel tired. You may have irregular periods, erratic periods. The perimenopause is really important because that's what impacts on your well-being, your home life, your family life, your work life. Brain fog is something which is really common. Anxiety, not sleeping. And this has a huger impact than things like hot flushes. So I think there's a lot of aspects to it, psychological as well as physical symptoms, as well as libido, sex and joint pain. So there's so much going on.
There is. And when it comes to the symptoms, because that came up earlier on in the chat, we often say symptoms are the physical symptoms. The things that we recognise the most are the stereotypical hot flushes, night sweats, aches and pains, which we often put down to just getting older, through to actually a lot of us experience the psychological symptoms around menopause.
Yeah, so anxiety, menopausal mood disorder, just feeling flat, losing that zest for life. Also, you know, concentration or not being able to find the words as easily. You lose track halfway through a sentence. And these are the things that start to impact on your self-confidence and your own ability to work. And some of the other lesser known symptoms are, you know, the bladder and the pelvic floor symptoms. You know, you may be going to the toilet more frequently for a pee. You may get urinary tract infections more so, thrush, you know, all to do with vaginal atrophy and again to do with estrogen depletion. So, you know, often the psychological or the mental health aspects and the vaginal pelvic floor symptoms are the ones that are lesser known or lesser talked about.
And of course, the psychological symptoms are the ones that can sneak up on you because you don't necessarily know your body's starting to change. You may be experiencing mood swings, anxiety, lowering of confidence. That you can really understand how that would affect somebody in the workplace.
Yeah, and it can come on from your 40s. And I think, you know, women often don't see, put the two together because they're busy juggling so many things, you know, home life, maybe their children are going off to university, elderly parents. So there can be a lot going on. And I think women just think, oh, it must be that I'm getting older, or they put up with it and they just get on and plod on, but you don't need to plod.
You don't. And we've got until 3:30, but I'm going to talk to you about some of the frequently asked questions around, 4:30, frequently asked questions around HRT. I think this is going to feel a little bit like John Craven's news round of menopause. But if you can, could you just recap on the risks and benefits of HRT? That's one that is often misunderstood.
So I think, you know, often the risk is, you know, I think often women are missing out on HRT because the risks are, you know, sort of portrayed very negatively, or the benefits are not sort of told about HRT. But I think it's really important to understand we as women are very much individual and our risks are very individual and our benefits can far outweigh the risks. So I think it's all about individualization, and that's what the NICE guidelines also say. And nowadays we have much nicer HRTs compared to the ones 20 years ago made out of equine urine, you know, and synthetic progestogens at much higher doses. So, you know, often the risks that women are worried about are breast cancer, you know, blood clots, and sort of heart disease or cardiovascular disease. And really what we need to understand with breast cancer is 1 in 8 women get breast cancer. The risks increase as we grow older. The risks increase with drinking too much alcohol, you know, smoking, and also being obese. So often I will say at the age of 50, your risk of developing breast cancer is 23 in 1,000 women over 5 years. But if you're on HRT, it becomes 23 plus 4. But if you're somebody who drinks 2 glasses of wine every night, it's 23 plus 5. And if you're obese, it's 23 plus 24. So, you know, there are modifiable risk factors that we can sort of take charge of and reduce, which Jackie and Julie are going to talk about as well. And really, we need to sort of individualize the risks versus the benefits. And there are benefits of HRT for bone health, for brain health, you know, for cardiovascular disease, as long as we start it within what we call the window of opportunity. And the NICE guidelines state within 10 years of your menopause, or within 10 or under the age of 60.
Thank you. And the thing about HRT is there's as many myths around HRT. I saw some in the chat box here. One that I'm sure we'll come back to very shortly, but one was around you can't take HRT while you're still having periods.
So no, so if you have symptoms during perimenopause, you may still have periods, but you can start HRT. So you definitely, you know, this is something that I often want to share with women, because they're often putting up with these symptoms. They're waiting for their period to end. But as we know, Deborah, you know, perimenopause can be 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. So how long are you going to wait? So you can start HRT whilst you're having periods.
You can only take HRT for 5 years, Shazadi. Fact or myth?
Myth. Total myth. And the NICE guidelines corroborate with this. There's no endpoint. It's very much that you assess, review, maybe titrate the dose and tweak it, but you can continue on it for as long as you need it at the safest possible dose. So the lowest, safest possible dose. So no, there's no 5 years, no 10 years. I think that, again, is from 20 years ago, that myth.
Yes, I think it probably is. And you already mentioned earlier that there are so many different varieties. So we often hear women saying, well, I took it for a bit and it really didn't work for me. But, very often it's not the first preparation. It might be the second preparation and the third preparation that works for you.
So we have gels, we have patches, we now have a spray called Lenzetto, we have oral medication. And if one size doesn't fit all, and if it doesn't, then you can try a different one or a different sort of preparation, and you may find that suits you. It's a bit like the combined pill, when we were younger. It may well be that one didn't suit you, or one suited your friend and the other one didn't suit you. So, don't just give up. Maybe try a different one.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'll just ask you the question, does HRT make you put weight on?
No. No, because it's about hormonal imbalance. So when your hormones are out of balance in the perimenopause, it also causes insulin resistance, and we end up gaining weight around the middle. And fat also makes a weak form of estrogen, so our body's trying to compensate. So actually going on to HRT, putting our hormones back into balance, should help us with our weight management.
Should help us. And HRT, does it prolong the menopause?
No, it doesn't prolong it. It just helps to support you and manage your symptoms. But if you were to come off it all of a sudden, then yes, you may get some rebound symptoms. And that's why I always recommend coming off it slowly and tapering down the dose.
Thank you. We'll come back to HRT, I'm sure, Shazadi. And thinking about that one around diet, does HRT make you put weight on? I think we have to go to Jackie on that one. So the aim of this next session, and all of this really, is for you to put together some ideas of next steps for you. And I did say earlier, Jackie's advice is always incredibly practical. So Jackie, what should we be eating and what should we not during menopause and beyond? Jackie, you're on mute.
It's the error, isn't it? Sorry. Right, I'll start again. Hi everyone. Nutrition, there's so much it can do to help you through this whole transitional phase, and I think the first thing to say is it's important to get the basics right. It's important to have those macros in your diet. So we need the protein, we need the fats. Yes, we need the fats. Don't go on weird low-fat diets, because we need the fats to make the sex hormones. And don't be going on very low-carb diets either, because carbohydrates are our primary source of energy. And for many of you, you're probably running around all day long, so you need that source of energy. It's just about getting the right kinds of carbohydrate, the complex carbohydrates. So the whole grains, the brown rice, the wholemeal breads, the vegetables, the pulses, the fruits, rather than the sugary foods, the chocolate, the white bread, and so on. But the one I really want to mainline on to start with, I want to give you 3 main tips to just take away from here. The first one is eat more protein, because women are notoriously bad at it. I see that in my nutrition clinic all the time. Far too busy having a little bit of toast and Marmite for breakfast and green leaves for lunch because you're on a diet, and then maybe a little bit of chicken in the evening if we're lucky. Men have no trouble with protein. They know they need it. Now, start to think about getting protein with every meal and snack. It's going to make you feel like a whole new woman. So good sources of protein would be the animal sources like meat, fish, or eggs, and then some of the plant sources like lentils, chickpeas, beans, nuts, seeds, soya, quinoa, all great sources of protein. Factor those in every time you're about to eat. Ask yourself, where's the protein in this before you take a mouthful? And the reason it's so important is multiple. First of all, we're made of protein. It's every single cell in the body needs protein for growth and repair. It's super important for blood sugar balance, which Dr. Harper just touched on. The importance of that is exponential. Not only will it help you manage your weight correctly, but keeping your body in that nice narrow band of blood sugar balance means that you won't be prone to the crashes. And with the crashes, you'll know those crashes, they're the ones that cause the sugar cravings that you're probably familiar with. Also, out come the stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, and they, of course, are going to cause massive hormone disruption. And the more disrupted your hormones, the worse your symptoms are going to be. So thinking about protein and fibre, really, with every meal and snack would be a great way to start. What else do we need protein for? We need it for bone health. Building strong bones. We need it because the body uses amino acids that are found in proteins to create neurotransmitters that govern things like mood and memory and motivation. And again, these are often real issues for women in midlife. What else do we need it for? Well, we need it all round for strength and stamina, and of course muscle function, muscle tone, because we lose roughly 40% of our muscle tone by the time we've gone through the menopause. And that's a real issue, which of course Julia will be touching on, because we need to be strong and fit so that we reduce the risk of falls and we can carry on being well from midlife and beyond. So protein's the first one. The second one, eat your greens. You'll know this already, but do you actually do it? And what I mean by that are your leafy green vegetables, things like spinach, rocket, kale, watercress, cabbage. I'd like to see 2 handfuls of that in your diet every day because it's an all-round winner for menopause nutrients. The first big thing it contains is magnesium, and I just love magnesium. It's my favourite mineral because it does so many jobs. If it was a person, it would be a very busy woman. It's got more than 300 different jobs to do in the body. So first of all, it helps to calm the nervous system, regulate the body's response to stress so that you feel better equipped to cope with the challenges of daily life. Often if we feel like we're just clinging on by the fingertips and operating on sheer willpower, you're usually low in magnesium. So think about getting those leafy greens in to help with that. We need magnesium also to activate vitamin D for the absorption of calcium, which again is super important for bone health. It also acts as our ignition key because it plays a key role in the whole energy production process. If you're low in magnesium, you're likely to be feeling permanently tired. And you know that little twitchy eyelid that we can often get? Classic sign of magnesium deficiency. Aching muscles, typical menopause symptom. Aching joints, again, magnesium can really help with that. I often recommend an Epsom salts bath, so 2 or 3 handfuls of salts in the bath. That's magnesium sulfate. It absorbs through the skin, calms everything down, not just the nervous system and the anxiety, but also relaxes those muscles. So it's a great shout before bed if you're struggling to switch off and you have problems sleeping. And then the last one is a spoon, like a heaped dessert spoon, I'd say, of ground flaxseed with your morning cereal, porridge, or maybe a smoothie, or stir it into a soup, but try and have it every day in some form. 4 reasons for this. Firstly, it's a fantastic combination of protein and fibre. They're 2 reasons really. So that starting the day with that blood sugar balance. If you get the breakfast right, then you're more likely to stay steady throughout the day without the peaks and troughs you can get. Secondly, it's packed with omega-3. So much research about how that can help, particularly with cardiovascular health, but also with balancing our hormones, cognitive health, and important things like skin and hair. And then finally, it contains phytoestrogens, lignans, probably the most common source of phytoestrogens in the Western diet. And these are plant compounds that help to balance hormones by mimicking the action of estrogen in the body. Now, the evidence base is a bit mixed. Half the research says absolutely makes a huge difference to women with hot flushes. The other half, not so sure. But you've got so many other good reasons to add flaxseed to your diet that I'd say give it a go.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And there was one question about magnesium supplements. What supplements, if I was to take any and nip myself off to Holland and Barrett or to Boots, which supplements would be the best for you during menopause and beyond?
Well, the no-brainer supplement is vitamin D, because although we make it, we produce it through exposure to sunlight, it's fat soluble, and once we've used up our stores, particularly once we move into winter, which is like now, we haven't got it, and we need it for bone health, mental health, immune health, also lots of interesting research coming through about the impact it can have on sleep as well. So I definitely say that 1,000 IU of vitamin D would be a no-brainer. And then I think probably the best thing, rather than taking high doses of any individual nutrient, because you need to be careful there, they're designed to work in synergy together. Too much of one can knock out the other and lead to unfortunate side effects. But for most of us, a good quality multivitamin and minerals probably a good shout, because it slightly mimics nature. It's got a little bit of everything in there, and like it or not, and I know that we should be getting everything we have from a balanced diet, but it's difficult to get a balanced diet in every single meal unless you've got a personal chef at home, because you're busy. You're busy working, you may not have had the time to shop. If you have had the time to shop, then half the fruit and veg you've bought's probably come from the other side of the world, so that the storage will actually reduce the levels of nutrients in there. And then there are factors like caffeine and alcohol, which deplete nutrients. Stress massively depletes a whole range of vitamins and minerals. So sometimes just having that underlying good quality multivitamin could make a big difference. With any supplement, always wise to check in with your doctor, because particularly if you're on medication, just because something's natural doesn't make it safe. And so you need to make sure that if you're on medication or you have any medical conditions, that what you're taking would be suitable. But for most of us, a good quality multi should be a good idea.
Thank you very much, Jackie. So some great tips there of what we can start to do. As you know, I'm a huge fan of lifestyle and diet and exercise. Yes, I do love my cheesy Wotsits, and it's very much an 80-20 sort of rule there. I'm just going to go to, and thank you for the tips around managing symptoms actually in long-term health, because good diet and nutrition does both, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to you shortly, and I'll invite Julie to talk about the benefits of exercise. And keeping my eye on the chat there, we will come back to the questions about surgical menopause when Dr. Harper comes back on. But Julie, so we're getting our diet right. Some of us will go for HRT, some of us won't, or we can't. What role does exercise play in managing symptoms and long-term health?
Well, it's really exercise is menopause medicine, and it's, well, how long have we got? Not long enough. It's really important for a variety of reasons. The here and now, going through menopause, it will actually help with reducing the number and severity of your hot flushes. It can help with brain fog, and I think we all need a little bit of help with that. It can help you with your bone health, with quality of sleep, lifting your mood, help with weight management. So it's tick, 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 tick. The problem is, we're all a little bit tired, or we already have such a busy life. How on earth do we fit it in?
Well, okay then. So I'm thinking to go and fit this in. How much do I need to do, and what's the best form of exercise?
Well, we know that the magic number is 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, or 75 minutes of high intensity exercise a week, a minimum of. And that's to get the real impact and benefits that's going to help you stay well, not just through menopause, but through the rest of your life. So this is your golden opportunity to make sure what you do now is going to impact on your health very positively for the next 30, 40 years. So what type of exercise do we need to do? I know it's all very well saying you should do this. You have to find something you love, something you enjoy, something that fits in. But ideally, we need the fabulous four, and that's flexibility, aerobics, balance, and strength. So we need the variety rather than just one thing. If you only ever swim, which is a wonderful exercise, you're not going to do enough for your bones because there's no impact. If you only ever stretch and do yoga or that type of a class, you're not getting the aerobic hit that you really need as well. So if you can try and build in all of those and make sure that it's broken down into little 10-minute chunks, if that's going to help you, so that you can build up towards that 150 minutes.
Thank you very much. And the one that came up earlier around managing weight, how does exercise play a part in that?
Yes, obviously nutrition is going to be really important, of course. Everybody sort of thinks, you know, if I just do 100 sit-ups every day, I'm going to get abs like Davina. And sadly, that's not the case. But what we do need to look at, and this is the bit that misses out an awful lot on a lot of our exercise routines, is the strength part. If we can maintain our muscle mass, which is spiraling down from the age of 50, 1 to 2% a year, then we are actually going to do ourselves a huge favour, because muscle burns off calories far better than fat. So if we can keep our thighs and our glutes strong, they're the big muscles, they're hungry for calories, you'll be burning calories even while you're asleep. So who doesn't want to do that? So I think as well, it isn't just about that tone, which we all want, nice toned muscles, but it's about reducing inflammation inside the body. That's invisible and it leads on to a whole host of illnesses in later life. So if we can keep our muscles strong at least twice a week on a strengthening session, that's using something you lift, push, pull against a load, using bands, your own body weight, or even lifting wheelbarrows, bags of shopping, that's how we're going to make sure we stay strong. And the really good news is it boosts your immune system, and we need that more than ever at the moment.
We do. Thank you very much. Can Jackie and Dr. Shahadi Harper come back on the turn your videos back on? Julie, I've got to say that there's a special request in the questions for you that says, please can we have that 60-second exercise again with WAM? So perhaps if it's possible to do that, and while Dr. Jackie and I finish off on some of these other questions, we can finish with you if you want to, if that's possible.
Absolutely, yeah. All you need to do is sit in a chair.
So prepare yourself for, in about 10 minutes time, we'll be getting ourselves wound up for it to finish off on a bit of wham.
Okay.
Dr. Harper and Jackie, some of the questions that were coming up there were around surgical menopause, and the thing around there was managing surgical menopause and how long is it likely to last. But one of the other themes that was coming through was around for those who can't take HRT, what's the alternative? So could we start a little bit with surgical menopause, Dr. Harper?
Yeah, surgical menopause can happen at any age, but often it can happen in a younger woman. Number of reasons: chemotherapy, radiotherapy, having a hysterectomy and bilateral oophorectomy. So for a number of reasons, all of a sudden a woman gets plunged into menopause almost overnight, and she can get the symptoms of menopause sort of coming in all of a sudden and a surge. It's really important, I think, for those women, especially if they are younger women, that they are on some hormone replacement treatment if they're able to take it, for their bones, for their cardiovascular health, for their brain, at least until the average age of menopause, which is 51. And for those women who can't take HRT, there are also other pharmacological preparations that you can take, like fluoxetine, the SSRIs, or gabapentin, which may help with the symptoms of anxiety, mood, and hot flushes, as well as all the lifestyle things and food, which I'm going to let Jackie focus on. So there are pharmacological ways of managing menopause which aren't HRT, and for surgical menopause, I would suggest the sooner you get onto some kind of hormone treatment and include testosterone as part of it, which is a whole nother can of worms. But I think I would definitely recommend it. And there's no end. You said something, Deborah, about when does it end? It doesn't end. As in, if your symptoms are there, and it's just like any other menopausal symptoms. It depends on when you want to stop, if you want to stop. But at least you should stay on HRT until the average age of menopause, which is 51.
Thank you very much. And Jackie, other solutions for those that can't take HRT. That was very much the diet you were describing earlier and managing your symptoms. And you've talked before about high soy diets.
Yes, I think what I mentioned earlier is kind of the basics, really. I think there's lots of fine tuning to be done once you've got those right. I think a few areas to think about. Certainly anything that's a diet that supports phytoestrogens. I mentioned the lignans found in flaxseed, which you'll also find in pulses, but you get isoflavones found in soya. Now, my advice would be to look at fermented soya, so things that are traditional to Asia, such as tempeh, miso or natto, because this is the traditional Asian diet. And when we look at the research around the women there who traditionally have had lower symptoms of the menopause, it's more likely to be linked to that rather than taking our own Western form and thinking, oh, soya, let's turn it into milk, because by the time it's gone through that process, some of the compounds may not be quite so effective. So I'd be looking at sort of the traditional route there. A couple of other things to think about. There's some very interesting research around sage. And of course you can have sage leaves, add them to your food, add them to a tea as well, which would be great. Now, the rather nice thing about sage is that it's not the same as some of those hormonal influencing herbs you can get, like black cohosh or red clover. Absolutely shouldn't be taking those alongside your HRT, by the way, because for a start, you're probably massively wasting your money, but also they may well interfere and you really don't want that happening. But what's going on with sage is completely different. It actually contains antioxidants, which have can have an influence in particular on hot flushes. So that's one that might sit neatly alongside it. But once again, I would always defer back to your GP, depending on what else you're taking and what you're doing there, to make sure you're not mixing things up.
Thank you very much, Jackie. We may have some time to come back to breast cancer and those that can't take HRT, for example, as a result of experiencing breast cancer. But what I'm seeing in the chat coming through is a key theme around going and talking to your GP, or my GP won't prescribe this. Now, one of the things that actually is keeping me awake at night is for the thousands of colleagues we've run training sessions for during lockdown or since lockdown, one of the key themes that we're hearing is I'll wait until COVID's over before I go and see my GP. When is COVID over? I'm not sure if any of us can answer that. I think we'd all wish it was today, but the reality is it isn't over, and we know that there have been instructions been given to GPs from the British Menopause Society. We know one of the benefits, if you want to call it that, of COVID is more and more of the majority of consultations have moved online. I know I've said before, one of the real benefits of moving online is you could have the leading experts in the UK. You could have Dr. Shahadi Harper sitting in your living room giving you advice during this time. But even if you're going through the NHS, and a large number of us will, GPs have also had instructions. They can do a menopause consultation via telephone or via Zoom. And Dr. Harper, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, the British Menopause Society has given out recommendations for how to manage women. And one of the things to also understand is, again, going back to the NICE guidelines, HRT is relatively safe for most women under the age of 60, and you don't need to have blood tests. Yeah, I mean, do book an appointment with your GP and go through your symptoms. Often, I mean, I think, Deborah, we've touched upon this before, is make a list. You know, make it a little bit easier for your GP. Write it down, write down your symptoms, write down the things that you want to talk about, because we've touched upon brain fog being one of the things. And if you're on the spot, you may not remember some of the things that you want to talk about. But yes, you know, menopause symptoms don't go into lockdown, and actually can help you manage this difficult time of COVID much better, because one of the things women talk about is feeling overwhelmed or not being able to cope as well. And, you know, if you are somebody suitable for HRT, it may well help you to manage this time and support you through it.
Absolutely. So diagnosis for the vast number of women is not based on blood test, it's based on understanding and being able to communicate your symptoms. So we always say, understand what's going on in your body, and keep a note of it. If you've got some priorities, the things that are getting in the way of you the most, and if sleep's in there, that should be your number one priority, because if you get a good night's sleep, you can handle anything. Read up. Do what you're doing right now. Read up on HRT, lifestyle, whatever it is that you're thinking of. So the conversation would be, I'm here to discuss my menopause and how you can support me. These are the symptoms that I'm experiencing. This is what I'm considering. What do you think based on my medical history? And a big top tip is, whenever you make your appointment, always ask the question, who in this practice is the best person to talk to about menopause? It may not be your usual GP, it may well be the practice nurse, but a large number of practices do have specialists in menopause, so ask. And it's great to see, I've seen in the chat somebody said that they didn't get what they wanted from their GP. Sometimes you do have to put your heels in, sorry about that. You might have to ask for a second opinion, or I can see that somebody asked for a recommendation for the menopause clinic in their area, so top marks on that one. So don't put it off is our key message. So that's what I would say about actual getting support. Any last words of wisdom, Jackie, before we start gearing ourselves up for the return of Carla and Julie taking us through some exercise?
I think for me, I've given you my top 3 nutrition tips, but I think on a much broader level, I would say that this is the time to be kind to yourself, because I cannot emphasize enough the impact, the disruptive impact that stress has on your menopause symptoms. So that blood sugar balance I touched on earlier really helps to reduce the diet side of stress, but you also need to be thinking about how you can look after yourself, how you can manage your schedule so you're not overloading yourself, dare to say no, take time out at the weekends to do things for you and not just for everybody else, because aren't we all just hardwired to put everyone else first? This is your time, and if for no other reason than that everything else around you will collapse if you're not okay, do it for that reason, because taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself right now will reap huge benefits.
Thank you very much. Dr. Harper.
I want to reiterate that, I've worked in the NHS for 25 years, and we're very giving individuals. And I think this is a time, for a lot of women, maybe to put yourself first, invest in yourself, look after yourself, because you're looking after others. A bit like on airplanes when they say, put your oxygen mask on before you put it on somebody else. And I think it's really important to do that. Don't be afraid of HRT. Forget those old myths, the old studies. We really have moved on, and if it is something that you can take or want to consider, then go and book an appointment with your GP and don't stop until you get what you want.
Thank you very much. Final words of wisdom, Julie.
I think that if you're feeling overwhelmed and the last thing you can consider is, oh, I've got to exercise as well now, come on, is to just think, I'm going to make a little change, and that will actually add up to a big difference. Even if you put the music on while you're cooking the meal in an evening and dance around the kitchen, hop up and down on one foot, get yourself moving, it'll lift your spirits, if nothing more. And yeah, I'll just do my 1 minute thing at the end when you're ready. I'll jump in.
For me, it would be keep doing what we're doing right now. Keep the conversations going. Now, I'd like to change the world, the way the world thinks about menopause, and make sure everyone's got the right help, the right support in place. The reality is, every one of these conversations, hopefully, if you go and talk to somebody else, or they go and talk to somebody else, you might not be able to change the world, but you might be able to change the world for one person. And that's where cultural change starts. So we're all in this together. So thank you very much for everything that you're all doing. Thank you very much to the panel of experts. It's been a pleasure as always. And thank you for sending us your questions through chat. I think now